Hello, everybody. How are we doing? Are we ready? Oh, I feel good. I feel good about this sprint race, I feel good about Brazil being entertaining during the sprint. I feel like qualifying yesterday was a bit of a weird one. It was a bit of a strange one. The way that it ended probably wasn't the way that we anticipated. I feel like the rain came. Although, if we hadn't have had that 15-minute delay, I feel like qualifying would have been perfect. Because of that 15-minute delay, we had the final little bit during the storm, and that was it. All over and done with. Hello, the king, Stefan. Wow. Royalty in the chat. And of course, Jamie here as well. How are we all doing? We enjoying this weekend? Ready for a Sprint Saturday? I love Sprint Saturdays. 2 streams with you guys. Little qualifying to start with, 45 minutes, quick and easy, and then a lovely little race in the afternoon as well. Don't mind if I do. But yeah, as I was saying with qualifying yesterday, I feel like we can delve into the details a touch. In fact, I think I still have the sector timings saved from qualifying and also the qualifying status itself. There it is, Max Verstappen on pole, 4 minutes and 19 seconds left in the session when they called it quits because the heavens opened. I'm pretty sure I've got the sector timings. So Max Verstappen kind of got away with this. He was not the fastest man out on track come qualifying by any stretch of the imagination. He was 6th fastest in terms of his best first sector time. He was very good through the second sector. He was quickest through there. 10th fastest of everyone through the final sector. So I'm in the camp that Max Verstappen got a little bit lucky. I feel, well, he didn't get lucky because he came out and he did what he needed to do. He made sure that he was out very quickly. It was only the Aston Martins that managed to get out in front of him. Hence why the Aston Martins are also right up there. But as soon as the rain started to come in, even the tiniest trickle of rain just completely drops your pace off of a cliff. There is no way that Lewis Hamilton was 7/10ths slower than Max Verstappen on his perfect lap. There is no way that Lando Norris was 1.2 seconds off of Max Verstappen on his perfect lap either. So I'm a little bit annoyed at the weather of Brazil. I'm going to be honest with you. I think it took away from possibly one of the most exciting qualifyings we could have had. But you know what? In a sprint race, we get another qualifying. So it's all back on. I'm loving it. I'm ready for Lando Norris to take pole position in the sprint. I bet Verstappen is going to beat the track record. It's definitely up for grabs. These cars are much quicker than they have been in previous seasons. Good afternoon, everyone. How are we all doing? The track time is now reset. We are heading in to qualifying. About 10 minutes off. But yeah, I just wanted to point that out whilst it was still saved from yesterday. Obviously, the fact that I think Max Verstappen got a touch lucky. I feel like Charles Leclerc was very, very quick. Lando Norris actually had the best time overall. So if you take Lando Norris's best sector 1, best sector 2, best sector 3, so his like perfect lap, if you will, he would have had the fastest lap overall from Max Verstappen by about a 10th and a half. So Lando Norris is going to be right up there again today. Lewis Hamilton also had a really good lap time if you take his individual sectors and put them together. So it's definitely wide open right now in terms of this qualifying, if the weather holds up this time around. But basically what I'm trying to say is Max Verstappen got very lucky because of the weather. The weather came because of the delay. The delay was caused by the Porsche Super Cup event. And therefore, if anybody owns a Porsche in the chat, I don't like you anymore. I don't like Porsches anymore. You know what? If I ever see a Porsche, just not even going to look at it. Not even going to take into account that Porsches exist anymore. Because they have ruined Lando Norris's opportunity to be top of qualifying. Whether Max Verstappen will be able to do it again, it was his 11th pole position of the season so far. So your bets would still be on Max Verstappen this afternoon to be right up there in terms of qualifying. Charles Leclerc, that lap that he pulled out, the fact that he is second in qualifying is absolutely phenomenal. Like, he was behind that pack. He was behind Verstappen. He was behind the Mercedes cars. He was right towards the back of the pack. And he was there with Carlos Sainz. But Charles Leclerc once again shown that he is probably the best qualifier on the grid. In my opinion, I say that he is the best qualifier on the grid. I know that Lewis Hamilton has 100 plus pole positions. I know that Max Verstappen has 11 pole positions this season. But for me, Charles Leclerc, the best qualifier on the grid. Amazed Rocket 666, thank you so much for the subscription. Appreciate that, mate. And welcome to the team. We will be live for the sprint qualifying or sprint shootout. I keep calling it sprint qualifying. And Taron from the On Track podcast, pre-race podcast, Taron is on track. He keeps telling me off for not calling it a sprint shootout because I think we do have to distinguish between qualifying and shootout in some way. And that is probably the best way of doing so. Actually, we released a pre-race podcast. So if you fancy a little rundown of our thoughts post-qualifying, and then also a little quiz that we did. Actually, I'd like you to have a little go at the quiz too. So I asked Taron on the pre-race podcast yesterday, the last 10 winners of the Brazilian Grand Prix without any duplicates. So if somebody's won it twice, they still only count on the top 10 one time. So you have to name the 10 most recent different winners of the Brazilian Grand Prix. And he absolutely nailed it. I won't tell you how many he got out of 10, but he did very, very well. And if you head over to the podcast, kind of the last 10 minutes of the podcast, we do that little quiz. And it was very, very fun. But anyway, let's talk about qualifying. Let's talk about other things that went on apart from the storm. George Russell took a 2-place penalty along with both of the Alpines. So George Russell, Esteban Ocon, and Pierre Gasly have dropped 2 positions each because of the new regulations around being slow in the pit lane. So obviously what happened after Qatar, after Mexico, we've started to look at the fact that drivers are stopping at the end of the pit lane. And effectively what they're doing is they are trying to separate themselves out from the rest of the pack. And effectively, what we used to see is the drivers kind of get themselves a little bit of space at the end of the lap. So they used to try and get a little bit of space by going very slowly around the final couple of corners. Now, the FIA clamped down on that, especially after Monza. They were like, look, we're going to put in a delta time where your outlap has to be within that delta. So you can't go any slower than this. And it stopped cars from going super, super slowly through the final sector. What they've done instead now is they've just taken that time that they would have sort of slowed down in the final sector, and they've moved that into the pit lane. So now you see cars trundling down the pit lane as slow as they can possibly go to get themselves into an optimum window where they have a perfect lap as an outlap to make sure that they can get around, and then also the perfect lap themselves once they then go for their fast lap. And the FIA have clamped down on that as well. They're like, look, just because you're not allowed to go slow in the final sector anymore doesn't mean you can now go slow in the pit lane. So they've also introduced a penalty for that, which George Russell, Esteban Ocon, and Pierre Gasly fell for. Basically, they weren't left enough. So effectively, you can still go slow in the pit lane if you want to, but you can't block the pit lane. If somebody wants to get past you in the pit lane, you have to let it happen. So you have to be as far left as possible when you are driving down the pit lane. And they weren't. Effectively, George Russell was in the middle of the track whilst there was cars trying to get past. Gasly, Ocon, the same during Q2. And all 3 of them 2-place grid penalties. I'd like to get your thoughts on 2-place grid penalty, because it's not a common one. We often see 3-place grid penalties, 5-place grid penalties, even 10-place grid penalties. But I can't remember seeing a 2 in a very long time. Actually, I can't remember seeing a 2 ever. There must have been other 2-place penalties before in Formula 1, but not one that comes to mind. It feels like a very odd penalty to give when we have kind of standardized penalties with 3, 5, and 10. So just chuck in a 2, just be like, actually 2-place penalty. Does mean that George Russell tomorrow, instead of starting 6th, will start 8th. And Lando Norris gaining a position because of that, which I'm more than happy about. And then also you've got Ocon and Gasly, who were starting in between the AlphaTauris. No, in between the Haas's. because they were right there. And they'll drop a position as well. So instead of starting 12th and 13th, they'll start 14th and 15th. So there are some penalties from qualifying yesterday to also add on as we watch a little bit of parkour, I think. Some parkour, of course. What's more Formula One than a man jumping over a wall? Nothing. I'll have that. But as I was saying, I do think this sprint qualifying will actually be more exciting than the qualifying in the race, because it's quite a short track around here in Brazil. Like, if we look at the Brazil track itself, or not, my computer's going to have a meltdown. There we go. If we have a look at the Brazil track itself, it's actually quite a high-speed track, and it's very, very short. I think it's the fifth shortest on the calendar. So we did have lots of lap times that were very, very close together, but also we had drivers that were able to do like 3 or even 4 laps, especially during Q1. Now, with the restricted time limits for the sprint qualifying, I feel like it's going to be a lot more exciting come the final qualifying session, because there's a bit more jeopardy in terms of the timings and a bit more jeopardy in terms of the drivers getting in that right window. Although, obviously, we didn't get to see that yesterday because the rain came in. It was absolutely torrential as well. But the sprint is about to get underway. We're almost there. Any bold predictions? I do feel like we're going to see the same kind of 10 drivers in the top 10. I do still feel like there is a gap between the top 5 and bottom 5 this weekend. Maybe an Alpine sneaks into the top 10 or something like that. But I feel like the McLarens look good, the Mercedes look good, the Ferraris look good, the Red Bulls should obviously be there. And then the Aston Martins were the two that kind of joined yesterday. Lance Stroll looks pretty quick. I mean, it's 3rd place from Lance Stroll. I think mainly because he came out just at the right time in terms of the weather. He was first out of the blocks and managed to get his lap time in very, very early. But he won't have that today because very, very clear weather conditions now. 45-degree track temperature, 24-degree air temperature. Sprint 1, obviously 12 minutes long. Sprint 2, 10 minutes. Sprint 3, 8 minutes long. A Haas into Q3. Nico Hulkenberg was right on the edge. And you know what? Kevin Magnussen's pretty handy around here as well. Definitely could be a Haas that sneaks into Q3. I wouldn't say that that is impossible. But I just think the top 10 did just look very solid yesterday. It's like, who do they displace? I guess Lance Stroll would be the pick, right? But the Aston Martin looked pretty decent. Maybe Sergio Perez. Sergio Perez didn't get to put in an actual lap. Oscar Piastri actually didn't look incredibly comfortable in the car yesterday. It's kind of snuck through a couple of them. I don't know. Hello, Rob. I was here yesterday. Welcome back. Thank you for joining. But yeah, I feel like the top 10 is going to be fairly similar. Bottom 5 we're going to be looking for. Is that going to be the same? 2 AlphaTauris, 2 Alfa Romeos, and Logan Sargent. That does feel about right, doesn't it? Does feel about right. Drivers are getting into the cars, though. Obviously, we do have to take into account that the tyre allocations this weekend are slightly different because of the sprint. They have 1 less tyre than they normally have. They have 12 sets rather than 13. So we may see, especially the top runners, I imagine, go out on a medium set of tyres. But then in SQ3, obviously, if you haven't got a brand new set of soft compound tyres, you're going to struggle a little bit compared to the rest of the field. I suppose that's the only thing that could really mix up the grid a touch. Who's got what tyres available to them? Because obviously we saw quite a lot of running on various tyres during free practice 1. Saw a couple of guys go for the softs. Ferrari in particular went for a soft compound run at the beginning of free practice yesterday. So they've got a little bit of a fall. Sprint Shootout has begun, by the way. The only reason I'm not showing you anything is because no cars are out on track at this moment in time. Hope Lando can perform tomorrow like he did in Mexico. I hope so. I really do hope so. He should have probably been on pole, or at least front row of the grid. But yeah, McLaren kind of got it wrong. They sent him out a little bit too late, in my opinion. That was why Max Verstappen was trying to jump the queue a bit. Here he is then, Max Verstappen, not holding back today either, and getting his Red Bull out on track. So let's head to a little bit more of a detailed look at this. I'll show you the cars as they come out of the garages. The Ferrari's about to join as well. So the top teams wanting to maybe get their laps out of the way. Verstappen, Perez, Ocon out in between, actually. So it's the Red Bulls, the Ferraris, and Esteban Ocon in between. And then the Aston Martins. Oh, no, sorry. The Aston Martins staying in for the moment. Thank you, Xman25, for the subscription. Appreciate that, mate. Hamilton and Russell, it is coming out. Alex Albon jumping ahead of Charles Leclerc in the pits. Gasly coming out between the two Ferraris as well. But Max Verstappen is going to get us underway. Championship winner, 3-time world champion now, Max Verstappen. That very nice helmet to commemorate his championship victory. It's running for the rest of the season. And 3 more Grand Prix available to win if he can get them all in the bag. Max Verstappen then gets us underway. Logan Sargent coming out of the pits, but won't get in the way of Verstappen. And Verstappen's actually got quite a nice run. May come up to the back of the Mercedes cars by the time he gets to the end of his lap. But should have a nice clear track in front of him. Logan Sargent, as I said, the only real problem, but I'm sure Logan Sargent will get out of the way of Max Verstappen fairly quickly. Does indeed, as they run down to turn 6. And then Verstappen catching up to the back of George Russell now. But will George Russell actually be kind of a little bit of a help for Max Verstappen? Could end up giving the Red Bull a tow down towards the line. Because I imagine George Russell is also going to be going for a flying lap here. So a lovely little slipstream for Max Verstappen just behind George Russell. And he's going to set the standard for us as he has done all season, Max Verstappen. Setting a lap time of 1:11.8 to begin with from the Red Bull man. Sergio Perez is coming around the final bend and going to come in with a 1:12.2, so just over 0.3 slower than his teammate. Esteban Ocon is next in that line, remember, with Gasly and Leclerc and Sainz also coming around on their flying laps. Hamilton and Russell also just finishing the first sector of their first flying laps as well. Carlos Sainz goes quickest in the first sector. The Ferrari finding a little bit of pace, and quickest in the middle sector goes Carlos Sainz. Charles Leclerc comes across the line quicker than Perez, but not quite able to battle with Verstappen. Gasly and Ocon, the two Alpines, slot in 4th and 5th, but Carlos Sainz is going to come around and change that. Does indeed. Goes quickest of anybody, Carlos Sainz. Was purple in all 3 sectors, but Hamilton quickest in the middle sector. Can't quite do it overall, though. Slots into 2nd place, Lewis Hamilton. George Russell goes 4th fastest. Alex Albon also has completed a lap in 9th. Logan Sargent will be next across the line. Oscar Piastri is going to start his first flying lap in a moment for McLaren. But Sargent, only 10th fastest, a 1:12.83 tenths off of his teammate for Logan Sargent. Needs to improve quite dramatically if he's going to get out of this Q1 session. Of course, we're just looking for the bottom 5. Only 10 drivers to have set a lap time so far, though. They are going to start coming in quickly. Zhou Guanyu starting his first flying lap, getting out of the way of Lando Norris. Fernando Alonso trying to repeat yesterday's heroics. How's the track look? Yeah, dry and sunny indeed. Antonio's nailed it. Like it did in Q1 yesterday, but with less threat of rain over the hill. Fernando Alonso just moving around. George Russell getting out of the way very kindly. Oscar Piastri, as I said, on a flying lap, comes in 8th fastest. Not vintage from Oscar Piastri, but he was struggling on the medium compound tyre yesterday as well. Lance Stroll only 10th fastest, so slower than both the Alpines this time around, although Fernando Alonso goes quicker than the Alpines, jumps up into 7th fastest, just behind the Ferraris, the Mercedes, and the Red Bulls. So Alonso kind of best of the rest at this moment in time. Can Lando Norris change that and break into the top 6? He can indeed. Goes 5th fastest, displaces Leclerc and Perez. And so does Nico Hülkenberg. Displaces a Red Bull, and Sergio Perez goes 7th fastest, the German. Kevin Magnussen goes 5th fastest, and the Haas does just seem to find a little bit of pace when it is in the right window. It was very quick during Q1 yesterday as well. Q2, though, came undone and ended up dropping out of qualifying. Max Verstappen letting cars past. And maybe... Oh, Perez went for a lap. Bit of a weird one. So let's see then. All 20 drivers have now completed a lap. Lance Stroll, Zhou Guanyu, Alex Albon, Yuki Tsunoda, and Logan Sargent currently the 5 slowest drivers. We're looking for 5 drivers to drop out. Everyone on mediums, indeed. No one on softs. It's because it's a sprint qualifying, that's why. Have to go on the medium tyres for this one. Piastri going again, not comfortable with his 14th fastest time. And quite rightfully so, I would say. Is it windy? Ooh, I don't know, actually. Kevin Magnussen on the radio. Something stuck on the wheel deflector of Kevin Magnussen's car. Into the pit lane then with Kevin Magnussen it is. 3 minutes left. Probably unlikely that he'll come back out again, unfortunately. Well, I don't know if they can get in and get out very, very swiftly. Ooh, Oscar Piastri, not an improvement. 14th fastest. And you know when I said it's looking like we'll have the same top 10? Of course, it's a McLaren that is looking unlikely to make that the case. Oscar Piastri. It's going to have to go again, I think. But those medium tyres getting older and older. Sainz still quickest of anybody with a 1:11.7. Hamilton second, Verstappen third. Leclerc and Hülkenberg on out laps. Kevin Magnussen is coming back out again, so it does have enough time to go back in, get whatever that was stuck on his front left wheel off. And Haas thinking that 2-minute gap is just enough, even with traffic, to be able to get back around and have a go before the checkered flag drops. Charles Leclerc is having his final go, you would imagine, in this qualifying session. 0.05 of a second off of Charles Leclerc's lap time. Yuki Tsunoda going quick. Well, at least a tiny touch quicker than Esteban Ocon's lap time, who is the man on the bubble at this moment in time. 15th fastest. Logan Sargent going a 10th quicker than Esteban Ocon's current time in 15th. Esteban Ocon will improve, though, is on an out lap. And will get round to the checkered flag before it drops. Charles Leclerc, poor middle sector from Charles Leclerc there. Nearly a couple of tenths down on Carlos Sainz. Might be a tiny improvement from Charles Leclerc, but not a huge one. No, stays 7th fastest. Not an improvement at all from the Ferrari. Oh, and there's a yellow flag in Sector 1 as Yuki Tsunoda does go quicker than Esteban Ocon. Oh! And Esteban Ocon's going to be out. He's hit the barriers. And that's going to be it. Red flag. And that's the end of that one then. So Ocon, Stroll, Joe, Albon and Sargent unable to finish their laps. And Esteban Ocon has... Ooh. And Fernando Alonso, I think, has a puncture. Front left puncture from Fernando Alonso. God, it's all over the place at the end of this Q1 session. The red flag drops. There's only 33 seconds left to go, so nowhere near enough time to have another go for any of these drivers today. And Ocon with it. Oh, sorry, Alonso with another puncture. Alonso had a puncture in free practice 1. And another puncture here today in Sprint Shootout 1. SQ1 will not be resumed. Is he okay? Oh, he's absolutely fine. Yeah, sorry, I should have probably said. He is fine. Not a horrendously bad crash by the looks of things. Looks like he just lost the rear end through the S's. And oh, as Ocon made contact with Alonso. No love lost between those old teammates. They didn't get on at the end of last year at Alpine. Alonso then left the team, of course. Let's have a little look then. Ocon. Oh! Fernando Alonso, I just don't think saw Esteban Ocon. So he didn't lose it in the S's. He clipped Fernando Alonso's front left tyre. So Esteban Ocon coming through the S's, down through turn 2, attacking turn 3. Oh! Oh, Ocon loses it. He does lose it. Okay, so Ocon then loses the car as he goes down the hill. And Fernando Alonso, unfortunately, is just positioned in a way that he collides with Fernando Alonso. So it's the rear right tyre of Esteban Ocon that collides with the front left of Fernando. Luckily for Fernando, he wasn't taken out there. That was a hefty shunt on the front left tyre of Fernando Alonso. I mean, I don't know whether Aston Martin are going to be able to fix the damage to that front left tyre in time to get him out. SQ2 will now be delayed by some time. Whose fault is it? It is Esteban Ocon's fault. It's not his fault that they collided as such, because he's just lost the car. He's just made a mistake, lost the car, and by the time that he would have been able to collect it, he's already made contact with Fernando Alonso and then spins round completely Esteban, and that's kind of his ability to hold on to the car done and dusted. At that point, you just kind of take your hands off the steering wheel and hope that the shunt into the barrier isn't too hefty. I imagine there will be a little bit of an investigation, but from my perspective, it's just a mistake from Esteban Ocon. There's no malicious intent there. I don't even think he knew Fernando Alonso was... Well, he knew Fernando Alonso was there, but Fernando Alonso was moving out of the way of Esteban Ocon. Fernando Alonso wasn't on the racing line. Has been causing a collision noted by race control. I don't know how much damage to Ocon, but the car will be fixed by the sprint. I feel like it will be fixed by the sprint. It's the rear end of the car. It's going to need a new rear end completely. So rear right, rear left suspension, rear wing. Fernando Alonso is the one I'm slightly more concerned about at this point. They need to get that front left fixed on Fernando Alonso's car. Is there any substantial damage? I think they're just changing the interior wheel there. And they've also taken the front wing and the top off of the front of Fernando Alonso's car. So they're just double checking everything there. Possibly some damage to the suspension. Interesting. Can't wait to Vegas after Brazil. Yeah, it looks good, doesn't it? Does look like it's going to be a good race. Looks like Ocon loses the rear before swiping Alonso. Yeah, exactly that. So he's coming down the hill, loses the rear end of the car. Ocon's going to spin out anyway. Ocon has effectively lost the car. He's going to crash into the barrier. It's just on the way to crashing into the barrier. He also makes contact with Fernando Alonso. So that is the end of SQ1. Has been cut short, SQ1. And possibly looking at Fernando Alonso not making SQ2. Piastri will feel a touch lucky there, I would say. It wasn't a great lap from Oscar. Tsunoda also managed to just sneak in at the final part of the session that was run. But they need to get that Alpine back to the garage as quickly as possible. They have got a few hours. Yeah, Alonso, wrong place, wrong time. Yeah, Ocon has already lost the car there. He's not in control. So Ocon's not in control of the car when he collides with Fernando Alonso. So a lot of damage. Fernando Alonso tries to get out of the way. Fernando Alonso does pull over to the left-hand side of the track, but Ocon carried so much speed that there's no way of reacting to that, unfortunately. You don't expect the car to be coming towards your front left tyre. Logan Sargent. Little replay here from him. Starting 20th anyway. And complaining about the Haas in the middle sector. Was the crash just like Webber and Alonso in 2003? Yes, maybe. I'm afraid my memory doesn't go back that far. Oof. Is a heavy impact from Esteban Ocon. I'm surprised there's not more damage to Fernando Alonso's car, if I'm honest with you. But the red flag is down. Let's have a little look at some of those sector timings then, just to see who was where on the medium compound tyre this time around. Lando Norris quickest in the first sector, but his lap time kind of dropped away as the lap came to a close, maybe just losing a bit of tyre temperature. Gearbox job for Ocon. Yeah, it's the whole rear end of the car, effectively. Sort of everywhere from... I was going to say the driver's seat backwards, but that's maybe a little bit of an exaggeration. The whole rear end, though, of Esteban Ocon's car. Wouldn't surprise me if the team decide not to take part in the sprint race and instead focus on trying to get the car 100% set up for the race tomorrow, because Alpine do seem to have a little bit of pace here this weekend and may be able to sneak into the points once again. Alonso could have gone right. Yes, true, but I mean, he wasn't on the racing line. There's nothing that he's not expecting a car to go anywhere near him, you know what I mean? But what was I saying? Yeah, Lando Norris's lap time kind of dripping off towards the end of the lap. Possibly didn't have those tyres in the perfect window as he came through the final sector. Because you can see first fastest, third fastest, and then 10th fastest in that final sector. Whereas the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz, a little bit more consistent. Third, fourth, first fastest in the final sector. Verstappen losing out in the middle sector this time around, Verstappen, where he was quickest yesterday of anybody. So maybe just a little balance tweak to the Red Bull, giving it a little bit more straight line speed, but Verstappen possibly struggling a touch through that middle sector because of it. The opposite for the Hasses. The Hasses both look really, really quick in that middle sector. 5th and 6th fastest in the middle sector. But you can see Nico Hülkenberg, 16th fastest in the first sector, 15th fastest in the third sector, but still managed to qualify 8th overall. That's just how good that middle sector was from the Haas. We're then looking at Sergio Perez, I would say. 4th fastest in that first sector, but then drops off massively in that middle sector, just compiling the thought process that I have for Max Verstappen and that Red Bull. Just adding a little bit more straight line speed, I would say, to that setup today for the sprint race. Possibly thinking about the fact that they're going to have to do some overtaking later. So just adjusting whatever they can to give that car a little bit more in a straight line. Oscar Piastri is the one that is very lucky for me. That really, really poor middle sector dropped him all the way down the order. Not too bad in the first and third sector. 7th fastest and 8th fastest. But 14th fastest Piastri in the middle sector would not have been good enough. I feel like Lance Stroll can feel a little bit hard done by. He was on a lap. Alex Albon similar. Feel a little bit hard done by. He was on a lap. Was improving. Felt like could have done a little bit better than he did. Although, if you look at his lap time in terms of sectors, Alex Albon not where he would have expected to be, in his opinion. Sort of prides himself on getting through to that Q2 session more often than not. Fernando didn't want to dirty his tyres too much, but Ocon had enough room. He was spooked, I reckon. Maybe. Yeah, maybe. It was just it's a racing incident at the end of the day. I think there's one driver that's made a mistake in Esteban Ocon. Fernando Alonso has left enough space for Esteban Ocon to go past. He's not expecting the Alpine to come anywhere near him, and he just doesn't have the reaction times to realize Esteban Ocon is going to come straight towards his front left tyre. But it is under investigation. We'll see what the stewards say. Just loses the rear end, Esteban Ocon. Come on, Danny Rick. Love that from Super. Yeah, Danny Rick through. 9th fastest overall, Danny Rick there. Although Yuki Tsunoda also sneaking through. So both AlphaTauris into SQ2. Chazza HD F1 stream. I don't know who Chazza HD F1 is. Maybe, should I check him out? Is he good? Chazad HD F1. Let's see if Stroll can perform like he did yesterday. Don't want to ruin your chances, but Lance Stroll's out, so unlikely. Guy from Chazza stream. Who is Chazza? Who is this man? Should I Google him quick? How do I think Alpha will do in the last 2 races? I feel like they'll do better in Vegas than Abu Dhabi. Oh, I don't know, actually. I say that, but I was expecting them to do better in Mexico than they did. McMuffin. I'll take it. It's a very sweet. It's a very sweet name for me. Thanks, Kim. I've never really had a nickname, but I'll take McMuffin. Don't talk about other streamers on another channel. Well, sorry, I just don't know who it is. Just don't know who it is. I like finding other Formula One people. Oh, he's much bigger than I am. Oh, no, wait, he's not. Is he? Don't really know. How is his Mexico Grand Prix watch along 4.5 hours? Who is this man? How is he streaming for? Like, I understand streaming for that long if you like you got a lot to say. We're now doing a little deep dive. Congrats on 20k. Thank you so much, Claire. Appreciate it. Hoping for Lando to do well today. The arms are crossed. Oh, he starts his stream 2 hours before the race. That is how it's 4.5 hours long. Fair enough. Good luck to him. But yeah, thank you so much, Claire. Appreciate it. How's life? You still in Norwich? Were you in Norwich last time I talked to you? Probably. Hope Kevin will get pole just like last year. I mean, he did have pole for the sprint, and then the sprint didn't go well. What did he come away with? 1 point? Some streamers don't like it. I've been told off before. I don't mind. You can talk about other streams or other people. I like kind of discovering new people within the community. How many more minutes before SQ2? Undetermined at this moment, unfortunately. I think we're just waiting for the barrier to get put back together again. It's a little bit like the red flag that we had in Mexico, where it's not so much the fact that the car is on the track. I mean, Esteban Ocon's car has moved now, and I imagine we'll be heading back towards the Alpine garage as soon as the session finishes. But they do have to put the tyre barrier back together again, so they've just got to make sure that if anyone crashes in that exact same spot, then it will still be an effective barrier in slowing them down and making sure that they are safe. Max Verstappen still in the Red Bull car though, so that is a good sign that we will be back underway fairly quickly. It's not like the drivers have gotten out and jumped in. What's my favorite Formula 1 games growing up? I didn't really play the Formula 1 games, I'm going to be honest. I played the one on the Wii, just because it was fun to have the steering wheel, like Mario Kart. George Russell jumping out of the Mercedes car. So there you go then. Unlikely that we'll be back underway within the next few minutes if we're seeing George Russell jumping out of the car, unless he just quickly needs to head out and grab something, because Oscar Piastri's staying in, looking over data and probably seeing that he was 14th fastest in the final sector and not the one. Do you know how many people say Bottas and Joe have been terrible this year? I wouldn't say they've been terrible, but they haven't been good either. You know what I mean? I feel like they're in that middle bracket of drivers that haven't exceeded expectation, but they also haven't done too badly. They haven't done anything under expectation, I'd say, for the majority of the season. I mean, I don't want to give away my, driver rankings, but I don't think they're in the bottom 5 or in the top 5 worst drivers this season. I feel like they're in that kind of middling group of they've done okay. They are finally putting that tyre barrier back together again, though. So getting the track prepared as much as possible. Oh, okay. Just comparing lap times to yesterday. Track is a lot slower. Got to remember they are on the medium compound tyre as well, whereas yesterday in qualifying, the majority opting for the soft compound tyre. Well, I mean, everyone going for the soft compound tyre by the end of that first qualifying session. And the track was getting a lot quicker as the session went on yesterday. A lot of rubber being laid down. That will have been wiped away by the rain. So now the car's setting fresh rubber down on this track, imagining it will get quicker and quicker once again as we go through these qualifying sessions. Charles Leclerc's an interesting one. I've just realised that he's down in the middle sector in comparison to his teammate by a substantial chunk. I guess that's the difference between Sainz, currently fastest, Lando Norris, where he should be, up in second place. Lewis Hamilton was third fastest. Max Verstappen and George Russell just behind. But yeah, Ocon, Stroll, Joe, Albon, and Sargent dropping out. Of those, I'd say Stroll and Albon will probably feel the most hard done by. I kind of sound like Christian Horner a little bit. Okay. I'll take it. I'll take it. Maybe. Just letting the cars cool down at this moment in time. George Russell, as I said, out of the car. The Brazil crowd do absolutely love it. Oh, there's a Senna Tifo as well. Very, very nice indeed. Who is everyone's favourite Brazilian driver? Senna's got to be up there for the majority of people, I'd imagine. I mean, I haven't seen too much of his racing career. I've seen like the highlights, obviously, but he's before my generation was Bruno Senna, Ayrton Senna. Bruno Senna was in my generation. SQ2, not yet. Not yet. Red flag indeed, yeah. So red flag in the first sprint qualifying session. The Aston Martin team still trying to put Fernando Alonso's car back together again. Not started yet. But no, I don't know. Felipe Massa is kind of the Brazilian driver that jumps to mind for me. Because like when I was first getting into Formula One, he was the one that was kind of there, winning races, battling for championships, and then also had that kind of devastating crash where the spring bounced up and hit him into the head, and that was quite a kind of a shocking thing to see as a Formula One fan, as you're like just getting into the sport. It was probably like the biggest injury that I remember from like early getting into Formula One, especially because it was one of the top drivers as well. Barrichello, yeah, of course, playing second a lot of the time in his career, unfortunately, Rubens. Although there is a new Brawn documentary coming out, obviously, about the 2009 Brawn season. And they actually have quite a lot of insight from Rubens Barrichello, which is not what you get often. Like a lot of the times, if you see little documentaries or little TV snippets about Brawn, it's always Jenson Button. They never really get Rubens in to kind of chat about his perspective. So it'd be interesting to see what he says about that season and how it happened and how it all came together from his side of the garage. And obviously he wasn't able to win a championship like Jenson Button, but still had an incredibly impressive season and helped them to a Constructors' Championship win, if I remember rightly. So be interested to see what Rubens Barrichello says about that. Felipe Dragovic, of course, Brazilian closest to getting into Formula One, test driver at Aston Martin this season. Is he going to get into Formula One? I personally think Felipe Dragovic might end up in Formula E. He has been very, very quick. I don't know if any of you have seen he did a test session for Maserati in Formula E and was devastatingly quick. Like very, very quick considering Obviously, he's never been really near any Formula E cars before. Just jumped in and was quick straight off the bat, effectively. So very, very impressed with Felipe Dragovic when it came to that. Senna was a demon in quali. Yeah, that is very true. Senna was just an overall excellent driver. Feel like everybody who talks about Senna only has positive things to say and only says how inspirational he was as a Formula One driver. He was just so quick in comparison to everyone else. What's my next Lego stream? Actually, I'll tell you what. I got this. Right, this isn't for me, but I have got some Lego over here that I can show you, and you can give me your perspective. I'm more talking to the ladies of the chat, if I'm honest, because it is for my girlfriend. But this is what I've got her for Christmas, and it is Lego related. And it's fine, because she doesn't watch the streams. Or at least I assume she doesn't watch the streams. I think she knows I've got this for her anyway. Thoughts? Let's get a little bit less light sheen on that. Wildflower bouquet. Would you like to see me put this together? I think I should build the Lego Death Star. Isn't that like horrendously... Like, how many pieces is that? Because the McLaren that is above my head, that's like, I think it's like 1,500 pieces, 1,400 pieces, something like that. Took me like 10 hours straight. I was like, it's Lego. I can put that together fairly easily, you know? Throw that together on a stream. 10-hour stream that was. 10-hour stream to put together that McLaren. Actually, I don't know how many pieces this is. 939 pieces. So this is actually probably quite tricky to put together as well. I know it's an odd one, McLaren F1 race, but you know, it's like Lego is what she wanted. She likes Lego and she likes flowers. Those two things together. Like this, I like Lego and I like Formula One. They got me a Lego Formula One car, you know. I feel like with Lego and nowadays, the fact that they make effectively anything you've ever wanted, you just think about what you like. Lego have got that, and then you get that. Although I might do one of the other cars. There are some interesting ones. When I was buying this, I also saw that there was like a Lotus. I think it was like a Lotus Evora that there was to build. There was a Ferrari, like a classic Ferrari. There was some good options. I'm not saying that there won't be another Lego stream, but not in the near future because they're an expensive purchase. Lego is pricey considering it's just blocks of plastic. But I suppose it's very specific blocks of plastic and there's a lot of them. So Death Star equals Max's car. If they ever did a Red Bull, I wouldn't mind. I feel like the fact that it's a McLaren, even if I wasn't a McLaren fan, I'd have still bought it. It's just kind of an added bonus that it's a McLaren. You can actually buy stickers to turn it into any car you want. There's kind of a lot of people that were like, I kind of want mine to be a Ferrari. So they just printed some red and yellow and black stickers, and you can kind of overlay over the bricks to make it look like whatever Formula One car you want. I'd love to receive that. Thank you, Sally. There we go. That's the kind of backing that I need. And Kaz also said that she likes it. Just McLaren F1 race. Not sold on the Lego flowers. We are back underway. Should we talk about qualifying once again? Little Lego detour there. Little chat about my personal life. It's absolutely fun. SQ2. We're about a minute away from getting underway. Max Verstappen already coming to the end of the pit lane. Sergio Perez behind him. Then Lewis Hamilton and George Russell also joining in 2 by 2 as we get towards the beginning of this. I'll pop the track map up so you can see who comes out where, but it's going to be the Red Bulls from the Mercedes to begin with. Jamie watched every minute live and would watch it again. Thank you very much, Jamie. Thank you very much. How much was the car? It was a Christmas present, so I'm not 100% sure. I want to say it'll be, considering like the price of other Legos that I saw in the shop the other day, I imagine it was like 150 Maybe 100. 100 to 150, like in that bracket. Something along those lines. I think it was probably £100-ish. £100 to like 100, maybe not 150, 130 in that ballpark. Maybe drink vodka whilst building Lego, like May and Hammond did once. I do like their channel. What is the Drive Tribe? I have got into that recently. Watched quite a lot of like random videos of Richard Hammond's house, which is just obscenely, disgustingly nice. Who can make the bouquet faster or slower than an F1 car? I feel like the flowers would be easier to put together just because, like, surely they're individually packaged, you know what I mean? Like, each flower is in, and, like, you just do one flower at a time. Whereas with that, it was like you had to build, like, the chassis first, and there was, like, an engine that you had to put together that you can't even see now. Pointless putting together that engine because it's just underneath the Lego. I mean, I appreciate it, but, like, it took me hours, and then it's hidden underneath anyway. I know what I'm saving up for. It's well worth it. Drive Tribe. Yeah, Drive Tribe. Anyway, shall we touch upon Max Verstappen? He is finishing the first sector. It's an 18.5 through the first sector from Max Verstappen. Sergio Perez, his teammate behind him. As I said, Lewis Hamilton, George Russell also on flying laps behind. Then Norris and Piastri will be coming by. Hulkenberg, Magnussen, Leclerc and Sainz is currently at the back of the pack of drivers that are on the racing track. Ricciardo, Alonso, Gasly, Bottas and Tsunoda still in the pit lane, and the bottom five right now as well. So Lewis Hamilton not quite matching Max Verstappen through the first sector, but not terrible through the first sector either from Lewis Hamilton. Verstappen going quick as well. He's going to set the standard once again in the Red Bull. It's in a 111.4 this time from Max Verstappen. A little bit quicker. Kind of, what, 0.3 of a second quicker from Max Verstappen in this one. Sergio Perez then still a couple attempts down on his teammate. Slots just behind. Lewis Hamilton's going to be next across the line, followed by Russell and then Norris. Hamilton a 111.9, so 0.5 off for Lewis Hamilton. Not what he would have expected, but not finding the pace on those medium tyres. George Russell surely will go quicker than his teammate. Open the door as Lewis Hamilton. No, it's also a 111.9 from Russell, 0.07 of a second. And Norris also 111.9 as well. So 111.9 seems to be the lap time. Unless you are in a Red Bull. Oscar Piastri has found it. There we go. That's much better from Oscar. Had a little chat to himself whilst we had the red flag and jumps back in. 0.3, just slower than Sergio Perez by 0.03 of a second. Nico Hülkenberg jumps into 4th place, 0.3 off the pace, but a 1.5 quicker than Lando Norris. Kevin Magnussen jumps into the 111.9s as well. Quicker than both of the Mercedes, though. 6th fastest from the Haas. Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc in the opposite order coming around. So Charles Leclerc across the line, 3rd fastest. Gets closest to the Red Bull so far. And Carlos Sainz is going to round out these first 10 cars. And it's 2nd fastest for Carlos Sainz. Sainz really looking quite quick here today. Just over a 10th slower than Max Verstappen. So Verstappen, Sainz, Perez are top 3 with Charles Leclerc in 4th. It is Red Bull, Ferrari. Then a McLaren, Oscar Piastri, the quicker of the two at this moment in time. Then a Haas, then a McLaren again, then another Haas. So we really are kind of 2 by 2 at this point, where Lewis Hamilton and George Russell 9th and 10th fastest. Ricciardo, Alonso, Gasly, Bottas and Tsunoda still no times to their name. Pierre Gasly getting out. Oh, no. Tyre blankets go on and then off again and then on again and then off again. Hammond's workshop is in Hereford. I would love to have a little tour of like Hammond's just life, I think. His house is incredibly nice. His workshop is incredibly nice. Just feels like, you know, when you got money to burn, do what you like. Ooh, Leclerc not happy with Verstappen there. Charles Leclerc not overly happy with the positioning of the Red Bull of Max Verstappen. Interesting. Ricciardo, Alonso, Gasly, Bottas, Tsunoda, though, as I said, still no time on the board as Charles Leclerc gets called to the weighbridge on the way back to the garage. I know it is random, but Charles Leclerc probably not overly happy with this right now. He's only got 4 minutes left of the session, needs to get back into the garage and probably wants to get out once again for a final lap. Tsunoda and Ricciardo, the AlphaTauri, still waiting. And is that soft compound tyre set on Yuki Tsunoda's car? Possibly. There's a red band around them, but I think that just means that they are Yuki's tyres because Daniel Ricciardo with a yellow band around. No, they are medium compound tyres. Maybe they are soft compound tyres on Yuki Tsunoda's car. Oh, no, they can't be. It's Sprint Shootout. I'm getting confused with myself. They have to be mediums. Yeah, sorry. Ryan, thank you for putting me right. I was like, are they soft compound? No, they can't be. All over the place. Who's my favourite Formula 1 driver and why? Right now, Lando Norris, just because I'm a McLaren fan. But overall in my entire life, I was a Jenson Button boy to begin with. Just because we had the same initials. was about the stretch that I got to be honest. Here we are. 3 minutes left to go. And we're going to see majority of the cars back out on track. Again, you would imagine. Verstappen and Bottas first out. Hulkenberg just behind. Yuki Tsunoda also slotting in. And we've got Magnussen, Ricciardo and Gasly all battling for position as they go through the pit lane right now. Sergio Perez coming out. Hamilton and Russell 2x2 in the Mercedes cars. Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris just making their way towards the exit of the pit lane as well. Followed by the Ferraris. So looks like the Ferraris are going to be last across the line. Unfortunately, Fernando Alonso, that Aston Martin car, not in a position to come out in this session. And we'll start from 15th place. Unfortunately for Fernando, come the sprint race, if they decide to even have a go in the sprint race, the possibility that they might just hold on to that car and go solely for the race. Verstappen and Bottas starting their flying laps then. Daniel Ricciardo also just behind. So a few cars still coming out of the pit lane there. The Ferraris still making their way out of the pit exit. You're going to have to be fairly swift with their lap here, the Ferraris. Bottas, fairly good through the middle sector. All 14 cars available out on track then. As I said, Fernando Alonso, that Aston Martin still not in a fit state to be able to join in this second shootout. But hopefully they can put that Aston Martin back together again. Max Verstappen goes quicker, 111.2. So keeps himself first, but goes even quicker. Valtteri Bottas puts himself 7th fastest with an 11.8. And the human wall at Aston Martin to try and stop us from looking inside the internals. Yuki Tsunoda goes 6th fastest. 11.6. The track is getting quicker. I thought it was going to get quicker, do you know? Daniel Ricciardo, 13th fastest at the moment. Still no time on the board, though. And goes 2nd quickest. A 111.4 from Daniel Ricciardo. And all of a sudden, Gasly 10th fastest. That's not going to be good enough. I think Gasly is going to drop out of this one, unfortunately. Lewis Hamilton very slow in the first sector. Sergio Perez goes quickest of anybody with an 11.2, but all eyes on Lewis Hamilton here. Needs to get into that top 10. Does about, yeah, will do. 4th fastest. It was poor through the first sector from Hamilton, but improved over the course of that lap. George Russell also fairly slow through the first sector compared to his last lap, but holding on to the lap time a little bit, maybe for the final sector. And there it is. Lando Norris goes quickest. 9 thousandths of a second quicker than Sergio Perez. And that drops Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg into the danger zone. Yuki Tsunoda now teetering on 10th. Charles Leclerc going across the line, 5th fastest. George Russell, 8th fastest. But that is over and done with. Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo, both of the AlphaTauri, sneaking through there, dropping Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hülkenberg out in the Hasses. Gasly dropped in 13th, Valtteri Bottas in 14th. Fernando Alonso not able to take part, unfortunately for him. Yeah, Yuki Tsunoda, 1:11.6 was the time needed. And a 1:11.7 from Kevin Magnussen. So Norris, Perez, and Verstappen are top 3. Perez all of a sudden looking like he could be in contention. Obviously, didn't manage to qualify where he should. Sergio Perez yesterday fell to the yellow flag caused by Oscar Piastri. So interesting that Sergio Perez maybe would have been a lot higher. Well, I feel like he would have been higher yesterday in qualifying, but where, we're not really 100% sure. 5 teams in SQ3 once again. It is indeed. But the Aston Martins have been displaced, and it's the AlphaTauris that have come in. There was me thinking, maybe an Alpine, maybe a Haas. No. Both of the Aston Martins out, and both of the AlphaTauris in comparison to the qualifying that we had yesterday. We still, of course, have 2 Red Bulls, 2 Ferraris, 2 Mercedes, and 2 McLarens. But the 2 AlphaTauris, Daniel Ricciardo, 4th fastest. So 3 Red Bull drivers in the top 4. Will Lando get pole? He did get pole in Russia 2021. That is very true. But is that his only pole position? It is, isn't it? Yeah, it's one and only. There's a few that he probably should have had this season, but less said about those, the better. Let's not talk down of Lando Norris after he's just had a very, very quick session. Danny Rick, though, 4th fastest, quicker than both Ferraris, quicker than both Mercedes cars. Oscar Piastri just still not 100% there, is he? Not quite up to the level this weekend. Was struggling quite a chunk in Sprint Shootout 1. Maybe can see himself a little bit lucky, Oscar Piastri. The fact that Esteban Ocon caused that session to come to a close because he was only 14th fastest in SQ1. But has made it through. Give him his dues. He improved in that second shootout session. Anyone but Verstappen, says Jamie. It's wide open. Max Verstappen with a 1:11.2. But Sergio Perez, 300ths of a second quicker? And then Lando Norris, 9 thousandths of a second quicker. Because of the short nature of this track, it's very much open for a lot of drivers to perform and close that gap. The tiniest mistake can really cost you. That Aston Martin car still being put back together again by the Aston Martin team. And Fernando Alonso making his way to the hospitality, getting himself prepared for the sprint shootout, for the sprint race, sorry. And a little interview from Fernando. What did he say then? Fernando Alonso hasn't seen the replay yet, so doesn't really know exactly what happened, but knows that he was hit into and taken out effectively from qualifying. They're hoping that the car can get back together again by the next session. But if not, they start 4th place Sunday's Grand Prix, so they'll be more than happy to just take the points available on the Sunday rather than trying to battle from maybe 15th and 17th in this sprint this afternoon, especially with it being a shorter race. No pit stops. It's tricky to really make up that many positions to try and battle for points. Obviously, only the top 8 receiving points in the sprint race as well. I feel like Aston Martin might play this a little bit safe and say that Fernando Alonso will not be taking part in the sprint race today. Who will finish 2nd in the championship? Door is wide open for Lewis Hamilton. And I think Sergio Perez has realised that 20 points is not the most comfortable margin with 3 races left to go and a sprint race as well, especially considering the form that Lewis Hamilton has been on recently. However, the Mercedes not looking maybe as quick as they were expecting at the beginning of the weekend. Hamilton talking up their chances, saying that they have a real opportunity to move forwards this weekend and continue to build upon what they had. But not quite looking that way for Lewis Hamilton at the moment. 6th fastest in that Shootout 2 session, was slower than the Aston Martins yesterday, but you can maybe put that down to where they came out in comparison to Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll. 8 minutes, of course, this session. Super quick. And 7 minutes, 30 seconds left to go. AlphaTauri with those fresh sets of soft compound tyres available to him, because they didn't get very far in qualifying yesterday, effectively. It's kind of played into AlphaTauri's hands a little bit in terms of the sprint. Not being able to get through in qualifying yesterday, don't have to use as many sets of tyres yesterday. That means today they've got some lovely fresh sets available to them. 7 minutes now on the clock, and we still have no cars out on track at this moment in time in this final one. Oh, you meant in the constructors? Oh, that's Mercedes, I feel. That's Mercedes. Ooh, Rob says Oscar Piastri 8th in SQ3. Yeah, I could see that. I feel like Tsunoda's going to be sort of towards the bottom end. If you had to like pick one of those drivers to be towards the bottom end, probably would be Tsunoda or Piastri, just because of where they've been this weekend. Although Ricciardo didn't really show up yesterday either. Suddenly come to life. 6 minutes left on the clock. I think everybody is just going to go for effectively a one-shot here. One-shot quali it is. It has indeed started, John. In fact, it's started 2 minutes ago. We just still have no drivers out on track. Drivers patiently waiting. I don't think anybody wants to be first out is the thing here, because the track does seem to be evolving, getting a touch quicker as the track beds in after the rain yesterday. Ferrari on the pit wall. Fred Vasseur. I feel like you can take a lot of positives away from this year, Fred Vasseur. There's been some ups and downs, as there always seems to be at Ferrari over the course of the 2023 season. But I'd say, generally speaking, there's been more ups than downs. And there's a lot that they can build on moving into next year with that Ferrari car. They're focusing on that next year Ferrari car already at the Scuderia. And they seem to have found a little bit of a rhythm since the summer break, at least. Bold prediction. Money on Piastri 5th. Are we all betting on where Piastri is going to come? Let's see. Optimistic, I'm going to say Piastri 6th. I feel like 5th is a touch high. Just a touch. Half of Sprint Shootout 3 then has ticked away on the clock. They are waiting us. Waiting? They are patiently waiting. The anticipation is raising. Nobody going for a banker lap. Could have chucked on an old set of tyres, put a banker lap in whilst everyone else was in the garage, but I think everybody is just happy for the one shot, effectively, in this one. And there is Oscar Piastri then, blinks first as we get to 3 minutes, 45 seconds on the clock. The Ferraris come out. The Red Bulls also just behind as well. Ricciardo third. It's going to be Piastri first. Norris second. Ooh, there might be an unsafe release for Lando Norris because Leclerc had to brake fairly heavily there. Max Verstappen not hanging about and making some moves in the pit lane, getting himself into the position that he wants to be in. Gets past Daniel Ricciardo and Charles Leclerc whilst coming out of the pits, then Verstappen, to make sure that he is third in this train. Dark clouds gathering. Not this time around, unfortunately. Not this time around. Norris and Piastri will get us underway then for McLaren. It's then Max Verstappen will be third across the line. Charles Leclerc is looking like he's going to be fourth unless Yuki Tsunoda and Daniel Ricciardo want to get in front of the Ferrari. Carlos Sainz then behind the AlphaTauris. Sergio Perez at the back of the queue. Although Carlos Sainz, on my graphic at least, has come to a little bit of a stop. So possibly has lost connection. Carlos Sainz. And Verstappen just on the radio saying he was getting blocked, but happy to make his way past everybody. Little gap for Max Verstappen. On the grass he goes and makes his way to the front of that little pack. Here we are then. Oscar Piastri across the line and gets us underway with Sprint Shootout 3. They made us wait for 5 minutes. But finally we are seeing cars out on track and we're seeing fast laps being done. 2 minutes left. This is it. Lando Norris versus Piastri in the first sector. Let's see if Norris can go quicker. No, Piastri quicker than his teammate in the first sector. A Mercedes in the way of Piastri has to get past. The Mercedes will be last across the line. Piastri round. Verstappen goes quickest in the first sector, though, of anybody. So neither of the McLarens having the edge over the Red Bull in that first sector. Very long middle sector in comparison from Oscar Piastri. And then have to get this right. Tiny little wiggle out of turn 12 into 13. And Piastri just struggling a touch. And across the line, a 111.1 from Piastri is set. Lando Norris going quicker, though. A lot quicker. 110.6 from Lando Norris. Max Verstappen then goes across the line. 110.68. So Norris has the edge over Verstappen. Verstappen second fastest, but Sergio Perez currently quickest through that first sector. Charles Leclerc then is next up across the line. Coming through the final sector, gets us close to that left-hand side. Third fastest from Charles Leclerc, 111 dead. So 4/10 off from Charles Leclerc. Yuki Tsunoda sneaks into third place for the AlphaTauri. Has that fresh set of tyres as Yuki Tsunoda, where Charles Leclerc doesn't. Charles Leclerc might miss out because of that. Daniel Ricciardo, fifth fastest. Sergio Perez, third fastest. Lost a bit of time in that middle sector. Sainz is next then. Carlos Sainz not looking overly quick and only goes 7th fastest. So it's not ridiculously fast. The Mercedes then, Hamilton 4th fastest, and George Russell is last. George Russell's flying in that middle sector is George Russell. This could be it, you know. Looking very, very swift. George Russell, final sector is where it's going to matter. And only 4th fastest. Couple attempts off there, George Russell. Lando Norris, what you could have had. Norris fastest in the Norris fastest in the 2nd sector and 3rd sector is good enough for that pole position. Max Verstappen 2nd quickest, Sergio Perez 3rd, Russell and Hamilton 4th and 5th. Yuki Tsunoda gets the edge over his teammate in 6th place, with Charles Leclerc, Daniel Ricciardo, Carlos Sainz and Oscar Piastri dropping in. I just feel like the Ferraris really missed out on the fact that they didn't have a fresh set of soft compound tyres there. They'll start 7th and 8th, but Lando Norris takes the pole. Lando Norris, I think, just a little bit put out because it wasn't the best first sector time from Lando Norris. In fact, his first sector time over the course of today is only 11th quickest of anybody. So Lando with a very poor first sector, and therefore maybe he thought it was all done and dusted, but managed to make up a hell of a lot of time in the middle sector and the final sector. You can see over a 10th quicker than Verstappen in the final sector, Lando Norris. So just got that McLaren to click just where it mattered. And that gives him the edge in terms of qualifying. Should be a good sprint. Lando Norris looking very, very quick indeed. And the Oscar Piastri was only 10th fastest there, unfortunately. For everybody who gambled on the Piastri positioning, I went for 6th. Not even close. I just thought he might be quicker than the AlphaTauris, but Piastri not this time. 10th fastest. Lando the one, though, indeed. So, quick rundown. Lando Norris will start the sprint race in 1st place. Verstappen and Perez just behind in the Red Bulls, and George Russell on the 2nd row as well in 4th. We then have Hamilton and Tsunoda starting on the 3rd row together in 5th and 6th. Charles Leclerc and Daniel Ricciardo on the 4th row, with Carlos Sainz and Oscar Piastri starting just outside the points. Remember, just the top 8 drivers managed to score points in this one when it comes to the sprint race. Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg will start just outside the top 10, dropping out in SQ2. They were in 11th and 12th place. Gasly in 13th, Valtteri Bottas 14th, Fernando Alonso, if he starts the sprint, will start from 15th place, managed to get through into SQ2, but not able to take part after that collision with Esteban Ocon, who will start just beside him in 16th place. Lance Stroll 17th, Zhou Guanyu in 18th, and the 2 Williamses at the back of the pack in 19th and 20th place. Thank you all so much for joining me. Thank you for watching. I'd appreciate it if you like, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And we'll be back in like a couple of hours' time. Gonna grab myself some lunch, maybe edit together a couple of bits and pieces, and we'll be back to discuss the sprint race. Can Lando Norris get his first victory in Formula One? That ever elusive first victory in Formula One surely